Hello and welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Mangoson here, bringing you another Diablo 4 video. And today we're going to be talking about the Pyromancer, or creating a Pyromancy build in general. Now, I do want to let you guys know that I do work a full-time job. I'm my own editor. I am my own thumbnail creator, so it does take me longer to put out these types of videos. Now, going over the build, we're going to be talking about some things that I want you to pay attention to. Is the mana used, the life healed, burn damage versus direct damage. Now, the mana used for a Pyromancy build is heavy. The life healed is going to be intense, and the burn damage versus direct damage is a big thing for the Pyromancy build. So our direct damage dealers are going to be Spark, and it's going to be Meteor. This is going to create a dynamic between your character of putting out those big bursts of damage for the direct damage and overwhelming an enemy's health bar with that burn damage. Now, when we combine the burn damage and direct damage, and we combine our other damage dealer, or also our other burn and direct damage dealer for the Hydra, you're going to see that you're not melting and incinerating and obliterating targets off the map. You're going to be creating a cohesive type of burn damage over direct damage to create that overall overwhelmingness for the single target damage and for crowd control. Now, when it comes to building out your Pyromancy build, you are going to want, on one of the pieces that you can have here, but on the head piece you have the gain the 0.25% armor increase for 4 seconds when you deal any form of damage, stacking up to whatever percentile that has been changed to in the 1.1 nerf and buff. Now, you are going to need this regardless of what the stat is, as you're going to be standing still for long periods of time, and all the things that you do damage with will increase your armor up to that certain percentile. Your hydras, your crackling energies, your lightning bolts, all forms of damage, burn damage, direct damage, any forms of damage will grant you that armor buff. So take that into consideration when putting this on your character. Now, we go over to the chest piece. The chest piece has on it, when you hit a crowd controlled enemy, there's a 30% chance for that crowd control effect to spread to another unaffected enemy. Now, when you channel incinerate, every 3 seconds you land on an enemy, you will hit them with that immobilized debuff. We're looking to spread that to other enemies, as getting them immobilized for 1.4 seconds or 1 second or even a fraction of a second gives us more of a chance to burn them with more burning damage, and we want to overwhelm the enemy's HP bar with burn. So what does that mean, to overwhelm an enemy's HP bar with burn? When you do enough damage that is more than they can handle for their HP bar in burn damage, since it stacks up over seconds, you'll be doing more burn damage. Now, on our gloves here, we have that you may have an additional Hydra, but its duration is reduced by a certain percentile. Now, in the 1.1 buff and nerf, the percentile for that has been capped at 20%, which can be mitigated later versus the Paragon board when you equip that certain glyph to grant you an extra 20% for how long that the Hydra is active, right? So it takes the Hydra from 10 seconds to 7.4 seconds with that debuff on it, and when you mitigate that, you get your full 10 seconds back, and that is extremely helpful to have that glyph on later on. Now, a Pyromancy build is not easy to make, and it's not too much fun to play with going from 1 to 60, but it does get rewarding later on. Now, we go over to the pants. We have them printed on here. You heal for whatever percentile life for each close enemy up to you, up to a certain number per life per second. Combining this with warmth, you're going to get certain percentiles for healing your maximum life for each nearby burning enemy, and bosses counting for more of that healed energy. So when you're around bigger targets, bigger boss enemies, you're going to be healing for a lot more. When this creates a dynamic in the build to where you're not taking as much damage as the enemies are putting out, as more of the Paragon boards, and you get into your damage resistances, that for enemies that are burning, right, essentially they deal less damage to you, which does add in more of the healing aspect as you start healing for that little lives per second. So you can stand completely still and heal for erroneous amounts of life, right? Now, you want to look out for the Esu's Heirloom, which is your critical strike chance is increased by 25% of your movement speed bonus. Crit chance is everything for this build, and movement speed improves your crit chance. So the more crit chance that you have on this build, your burning damage is going to be increased by that, as well as the direct damage and the burn damage are completely two different things, and we're going to want that burn damage to exceed an enemy's health bar, so we can do a greater percentile of burn damage to them over time, which will give us time to move around and to move about and to restack that burn damage on an enemy, creating that overwhelming amount on their HP bar. Now, you can do this less on bosses, but more on regular enemies, more elites. Now, on the wand I have, while enemies are affected by more damage over time than their total life, you deal a, in this case, 39% multiplicative increased burn damage to them. Now we combine that with the Firebolt enchantment. Direct damage from skills applies up to an additional 1000 burn over 8 seconds. And with our Lightning Bolt, or the Lightning Bolt primary skill, it has a chance to launch a bolt of lightning that shocks an enemy 4 times, dealing 10% of your damage. And each spark that hits its primary target has a 40% chance to hit 3 additional enemies, doing 7% damage. And if there are no other enemies to hit, Spark instead deals 20% multiplicative damage, increased damage to its primary target. Now, what we are focused on here is not all the multiplicatives and all the little added damages on there. What we're getting into is triggers for lucky hit, and we're going to be focused on burn damage and ticks. Now, the ticks of damage, when we get to that burn damage, so Incinerate's going to do like 5,000 burn damage over like 8 seconds, and then the Firebolt is going to do the 1,000, and then the Lightning Bolt's going to do its 7 to 20% to 10 to 11%, and we're getting more and more of these ticks additively that are going to do multiplicative damage, which grants us more overall burn damage for the build. It's a lot to take in its entirety, but once you start putting it all together, you realize that enemies will either be executed by the build because they're just taking too much damage, or they end up just burning out. Now, our burn damage specifically is going to be Incinerate. The mana cost has been reduced to 11 per second, so it's way more easier to use. Has a 22% lucky hit chance, channel a beam of fire, burning enemies for 3,000, and increases that damage up to 5,000 per second, up to over 4 seconds. Now, our flame wall is going to do an increased 25% multiplicative burn damage on enemies the longer they stand inside of that flame wall. Now, flame wall is one of our enchantments on our build, along with the Firebolt. So the Firebolt's going to do its burn damage. The Flame Wall is going to give us mana generation back. The Flame Wall is also going to do 25% multiplicative damage for enemies standing in that. And Incinerate's going to do that 3,000 up to 5,000 burn damage on top of the target as we stand still and continuously beam them down with Firebolts. Now, Meteor is going to be a part of our build, as it's going to be the key immobilizer and the big damage dealer when we activate Inferno. Inferno is going to wrap enemies up and bring them closer together for Meteor to strike them, and our Meteorite's going to do more damage, but we're going to get into that in a second. Talking about our key passive, the EU's Furiosity, which does critical strike damage, critical strike chance, or we have combustion. Burning effects deal 2 times multiplicative burn damage per unique source of burning that you have applied to the enemy. And if the enemy is burning for 3 or more sources, this bonus is doubled up to 4% multiplicatively. So which one do you use? EU's Furiosity or Combustion? Well, I've used both of these from being able, when I was able to unlock them. And overall, you're going to get more bang for your buck when using the EU's Furiosity, as critical strike damage and critical strike chance is far more beneficial than waiting for burn damage from 3 unique sources. That's a lot of sources. So you need Lightning Bolt, Hydra, Incinerate, Meteor, and that's only 4 that I can name off, and then you're already going through your whole bar of abilities there. It's really unfun to try to do that. So if we talk about the glyphs that we have here to make the build even better, we have the Torch glyph socket. Now that is going to be one of our primary ways to increase our burn damage. So with every 5 willpower purchase within range, you deal 4%, you deal an additive 4% increased burn damage, and then additional bonus requirements met, you deal a 2 times multiplicative increased damage per nearby burning enemy, up to 12% multiplicative damage. So you can see the benefits of that as you're going to be standing still for Incinerate. Now, the legendary node, Burning Instinct, your burning damage is increased by 40% of your critical strike damage, further increased by 5% for every 20 intelligence you have. And then we have the last one, which is Conjurer, which is that mitigation of the 20%. negative that you get for having the additional Hydra equipped to your character. So again, that comes with the Paragon board that comes later on in the game, as the Pyromancy, the Pyro build altogether just has a lot of negatives to it and not a lot of positives, because it doesn't want you to get too crazy with the fire damage, and I can see that. So crit chance, crit damage is again going to be key to any Pyromancer build, as the burn damage can get critical hits, the direct damage can get critical hits. Your Hydra will gain a 30% critical hit chance multiplier when you do a critical hit, and that goes back to EU's Furiosity, where your fire critical strike damage is increased by 25% multiplicative against enemies above 50 life, right? So when they're healthy, and then your fire critical strike chance is increased by 5% additively against enemies 50% life or below that. So that's 80% health. That's below 100%. So when they hit the 80% health threshold, they are no longer healthy. You get that additive 5% critical strike chance on them. Now the Hydras, the Flame Wall, the Meteorites, the Incinerates, and getting these things up to max level is not hard to do. Getting them all up to plus numbers is very easy to do. So the Pyro build itself can be maxed out, right? Because so many things are put in so many different slots. Now, imprinted on some of my gear here, I have a 21% critical strike chance against injured enemies. That's at that 80% threshold. And when you are healthy, you gain an increased 42% crowd control duration, which is going to play into our immobilization. Now we have Meteorites fall around Meteor, dealing minor damage, but the burn damage that it does is 1,000 to 2,000 damage over 6 seconds, getting back into the overwhelming the enemy's health bar. Now, while Unstable Currents is not active, your shock skills have a 9% chance to trigger a free cast from it. So just passively, while you're doing your burn damage, doing those ticks, the crackling energy, the thunderbolts, the little multiplicatives here, the lucky hit chance here, the meteorites, the burn damage, are all going to give us a chance to cast another cast of a lightning skill, which in my opinion does end up becoming beneficial to the build. But if you want to take it off and you don't want to use this, then you're going to want something that's going to increase your overall attack speed, which there's one when EU's Furiosity is active, you get an increased attack speed for 3 seconds or something by 50%. So you can do that, or do the one where when your core skills do hit a critical strike chance, your attack speed gets increased by a certain percentile. Now, if you guys did enjoy the video, if you guys did like the video and everything that in the way that I put it together in order to build this little lightning pyromancy build, go ahead and hit that like button, as it will really help me out. Again, I am my own editor. I do work a full-time job to support my family, and doing this YouTube thing is a fun little hobby for me, but I do appreciate when the numbers do go up, as it motivates me to do more of these YouTube videos, if you guys do appreciate that. So I apologize for as long as it does take me to create a Diablo 4 video, but I do appreciate you guys for sticking with me through this long journey. Now, I'd like to thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in the next one.